Back on MorningLine, we are talking just one of the more amazing cases I've ever come across that's about to go to trial on Monday. Alex Friedmann accused of planting weapons inside the jail, charged with vandalism. Nick Leonardo, our legal analyst. It's interesting, you know, sitting in that very seat, Davidson County Darren Hall joined me on more than one occasion over the past couple of years, and he's basically said as much that in his career, he's never seen anyone commit something as dangerous as this, considers Friedmann to be a very dangerous man. And what's unique about it is a little background on Friedmann. Darren Hall knew him. For years, and we did news stories with him as a prison reform advocate. He did time, you're right, you said he had priors, and he came out and disturbed by what he saw happening behind bars. He became a legitimate prison reform advocate that people may not always agree with, but respected, right?
That's right. I think you're right about that. I mean, I don't think by any stretch this is dumb luck. I mean, he certainly planned it, and I think he's probably a pretty intelligent guy that did something, you know, made a really bad decision.
Right. I mean, the sheriff said, and one thing that got him so much is the sheriff said, Nick, I had meetings with him where I sat across from him on more than one occasion where we were talking about things we could do to improve the jail or grievances he might have had, and I would meet with him and talk with him as a prison advocate. And so, yeah, you just hit it on the head. Assuming he did this, and again, innocent till proven guilty, where did he go off the edge? I mean, what's going on here?
Well, and I think this...
And how would this further his cause?
Well, there's going to be a lot of surprises. I mean, I think there's, you know, on both sides of this, from the defense as well as the prosecution. Again, I mean, maybe, and when we went to the break, you were talking about identity. Maybe identity is certainly an issue in this. I mean, just because he's on site, okay, he's an advocate, he has an interest, so maybe there are still images of him that clearly this is Mr. Friedmann on this work site. But do they have video of him, you know, putting firearms into walls? Do they have videos of him actually engaging in the vandalism? Or because there's so many people coming and going, you know, maybe that's a stance they take. Maybe they say, sure, he was there. He's interested in how prisons are built, but he didn't do it. You know, I mean, so yeah, he grabbed a card or something, right? I mean, what do they have in surveillance that actually depicts him engaged in this act? Because prosecution's going to have to prove that.
Yeah, and I think that's going to be the defense, right? I mean, it could have been just, you know, really, this should just be a trespassing charge, or yeah, we acknowledge he took maybe some keys or something and took them and brought them back. Again, which taking keys, you can make copies, that could be a problem. But that would be it, right? His defense is going to be, look, yeah, he shouldn't have done that. He trespassed, he maybe took a couple small items, but a Class A felony for vandalism?
Well, they're going to have to show that the damages are up to $200 or over $250,000.
How will they prove this one way or the other? Is David Rabin and Ben Rabin, are they going to introduce, well, wait a second, they said they had to change these locks. We checked with the contractor. You could do these locks and change them for a couple $1,000.
Well, I mean, I think that could, you know, they could obviously cross-examine. I mean, Darren Hall he's a stand-up guy. He's been great for our city. He's going to make a great witness. I can assure you that.
He'll definitely testify.
Absolutely. I mean, he's who you want. I mean, he's your star witness if you're the prosecution, because he's going to testify the amount of damages and what the costs were. But you know, one thing you could say is, well, you know, obviously on cross-examination, you could say, Sheriff Hall, do you normally investigate your own crimes? I mean, why didn't you go to the TBI? Why didn't you go to the police department and have them review that footage? Okay, why did you bring in your own staff to review that footage? Because typically that's not what you do, right, Sheriff? I mean, you're not the one that investigates crimes. You're the one that serves process and houses people who are incarcerated here on small sentences. And so why did you engage in it? You voluntarily undertook that endeavor when the police or the TBI or someone maybe at the district attorney's office could have reviewed that footage, because that was their job, right? That's not your job, Sheriff Hall.
Okay, and it's interesting you bring that up. So that's basically, why do you imagine the sheriff did it that way? I've never asked him that. I guess I just kind of assumed, okay, it happened at his jail, no one knows it better, they'll investigate it. And I don't know, maybe some outside, you know, resources were brought in to assist. But what do you think? Was that a mistake?
If I'm Darren Hall, and I don't mean to be presumptuous, but you know, if I'm him, I'm going to say, look, I want to make sure that wasn't my staff, right? And I'm not leaving that to anyone else to look at, because no one knows my staff like I know my staff. Okay, and like the captain and the lieutenant who are on duty, you know, that could have been someone from my staff who dressed as a construction worker or something. So, you know, that would be his interest to make sure that, you know, it's his job to run this jail and to, you know, to incarcerate folks. And so if I'm him, that would be my response, is that I firsthand wanted to make sure that my people weren't involved.
Now, ultimately, after he conducted his internal investigation and looked for those very things, they had to bring their case to the DA, who decided to bring charges, correct?
I mean, yeah, I think the DA
Metro
brought
Police
charges
had to make
early
the
on.
arrest and all of that.
Sure. But early on, I mean, I guess they found what they found and went to the police department, because I believe he was arrested just just on regular warrants for maybe burglary and
early on.
trespass or something like that, which are low-grade felonies.
And he was out on bond initially on that, and then later indicted and then brought back in, and he's been locked up. I think his bond is $2.5 million.
It's a big bond.
That is a big bond. I have to tell you, and you and I both know Darren Hall quite well because he's been coming on this show with me for years now. I've never seen him this angry.
I don't blame him. I mean, because clearly, this is something you couldn't say at trial, but I mean, clearly he intended, what happens when someone is incarcerated and gets firearms? They're not going to sit there and clean them, they're going to use them to escape, okay? And so that could have very well meant the loss of Mr. Friedman's life or the life of the sheriff's deputies. And that certainly touches and concerns anyone who's in charge of law enforcement. And so, yeah, I would be mad too if I was Darren Hall.
Yeah.
I'd be livid.
The way I understand it too, now when we talk about $250,000 as the vandalism, which is a Class A felony, when this happened and it was revealed, not only you have to figure, and he hated it happen, but it's embarrassing. That's what it is, part of it. It's embarrassing that this happened. Okay, so there's the embarrassment factor, but then on top of it, the cost. I mean, that's an awful lot of money. Because of this happening, it delayed the opening of the jail. It delayed it, and delays cost money. They had to leave the inmates out where they were at over there off Harding Place for a longer period of time, bring people in. I understand a lot of these locks in the new jail are electronic, and there's certain types, more expensive, different to, I could see how it adds up, can't you? And what,
sure.
Sure.
I mean, you don't want to cut corners. I mean, if security's been breached, then, I mean, you want to ensure the integrity of the facility. And so if that means that you have to rekey, then that's, I do believe, though, that the defense had filed a motion to, throw out the fact that they were going to raise the issue of the employee cost that the Sheriff's Department had in reviewing that. And I believe the judge, ruled that, well, whether or not that's actually vandalism, that's going to be a question for the jury. So, so they left that in. But again, I think there's lots of surprises to come. And moreover, I mean, it's not Darren Hall's fault that any of this happened. Clearly, it's the general contractor's fault. Okay, they're the ones that's supposed to. They have the bond for the site. They're the ones who hire the subcontractors. They are the ones who essentially have to ensure security on a building site. Darren Hall was not. That's not his job. Right? I mean, Metro contracted with somebody, and clearly they've dropped the ball.
Yeah, and I remember we looked into that. I'll have to review that and how that played out, because you're right, this is a construction project that Metro had commissioned. And
what if they sued the general contractor, got the money recouped? Then what does that mean for the criminal trial, if anything?
Yeah, and I don't know the answer to that. That's a good point. But so Darren Hall, very upset. Do you think there was a degree of embarrassment with this?
Not on Darren Hall's part.
No, but I mean, just for the city, that something like this could happen with the jail. Yeah, I'm not saying it's Darren Hall's fault at all.
Sure, I do think that there's a degree of embarrassment, but the people that are accountable for that embarrassment on the civil side of things, I don't think have been held accountable, to my knowledge. I mean, that general contractor made a mistake. I mean, if people can go and come and go, willy-nilly like that, how many other people are coming and going on other sites, that this individual is doing? So, I mean, clearly they're going to change the way, I would think, that they handle the building of a secured facility.
Jail or a prison, you would think. And I wonder in the past, I mean, that if this has ever been tried, I mean, is there security in place? Has there been where maybe the contractors have to show a badge to go through a gate just to get to the main compound? I don't know that there ever has. After this, you would think there would be.
Oh yeah, you would think there would
something
be.
Like this.
And but again, this is a lesson. We don't build a lot of jails, thankfully, but again, this is a lesson for other states, other cities that are constructing new facilities to make sure that there is a very tight security on site to prevent something like this from occurring in the future.
The thing that I'm curious about, and you just said we're going to get some surprises at trial, but what I've been waiting for all along come trial is it to spell out a little bit more about what his motive or what the thinking or what the scenario might have been to plant these weapons. But you don't think that'll come up in trial, do you? I mean,
is the motive?
Yes.
Well, I mean, if he doesn't testify, I mean, the motive, and I don't know what he had said to any police or any other folks that after he was arrested, I'm sure he was interrogated. And being an activist like that, I'm sure he didn't, he's not stupid. So I don't think he maybe admitted his involvement, but I think he would have a hard time refraining from talking about prison reform, right? I mean, he's probably a guy that
How
likes
would
to
this
discuss.
play toward this guy? I guarantee you, you're right. In a twisted thinking in his mind, if he committed this crime, he's thinking this is somehow going to further his cause, which he clearly believes in, prison reform, whatever issues he thinks there are. But I want to know what was his plan? Was his plan all along to be caught and to have this exposed? But how does this further a prison reform issue? I just don't get it.
Well, and you know, and kind of a weird twist too is that this facility is not only state of the art, but Sheriff Hall has he gets it, and he has been clear from day one about his commitment to mental health.
Absolutely.
And so now in our new jail we have the Behavioral Care Center, okay, the BCC as it's called. And so a lot of what we see in the criminal justice system is that people are it's a revolving door because people have mental health or substance abuse issues, and if you don't address those issues, they're going to be back next week. They're not going to do well on probation, right? And so if we can make people productive members of society and keep them out of jail, clearly it's going to save us more money in the long run, and we'll have a better society. And so there is a focus now at that new facility on mental health and substance abuse if people want to avail themselves of those services, which is a great thing. And so this is kind of a cutting edge, state-of-the-art sort of approach that Sheriff Hall has taken, and the Metro Council approved it. I think it's a good thing. And then Frierson comes in. This is maybe not the one he should have.
That's what I was going to say. I guess he did it because this was the county where they were building a jail. But the truth is, there are other jails and prisons that I think have real legitimate problems and do need reform. And the one here in Davidson County, because of the very reasons you said, it's probably one of the last ones on the list. Not that it's perfect, but there are far worse than this one. But it just happened that the jail was being built here, and whatever his plot was, well, there's my opportunity.
Well, and we just had some really serious criminal law reform, some of the most serious I've seen since I've been a lawyer last year, and I think that was the legislature's response to not wanting to apportion more funds to build jails. But now, if you test positive for drugs while you're on probation, the first time, I think you get 15 days, the second time maybe 30, and third time maybe 90. Of course,
you've got that truth in sentencing crap.
Well, now that's separate. That's completely separate.
I know, but that's going to cause a lot of people like, crap, what? It should be truth in sentencing. If all of a sudden you take out the possibility of early release for good behavior, we're going to be building a ton more prisons and jails.
Well, and they tried that.
And you want to pay for that? Yeah, they've tried it before, and it failed.
80s, and it failed.
But the lawmakers here, it hits home with people who just look at the surface issue. Trust me, you're all going to be paying a lot more money for more jails and prisons to be built, or my prediction is in the next 4 or 5 years, when things get extraordinarily overcrowded, they're going to have to get rid of that.
Well, we need more things like drug court. I know that Judge Dalton, who's a criminal court judge here, she's got a drug court that she runs, which is a fabulous place, just like Judge Norman. He had his drug court. That stuff works. The recidivism rate is low. 95% or so of the people that go into custody at some point are getting out. So what are we doing while they're there? Not that it's incumbent upon us to do anything, but we don't want them coming back. We want them to be able to be productive members of society, pay taxes and the like. So it's important that we look at correction in a different light. And I think we're seeing that nationally as well.
I couldn't agree
on
with
both
you
sides
more.
of the aisle.
I'm tired of paying for more and more inmates being locked up, when they could possibly be out functioning in society. By the way, Judge Dalton's great.
Yeah, and so was her new drug court.
I've been very impressed with her in some of the recent trials we've covered. Listen, we'll take a break. We've got a little more to touch on that, and then I've got a couple of questions for our friend about a very high-profile case that goes back quite some time, and I'm talking about the Wooded Rapist. There's new developments with Jason Burdick, so stick with us. We'll be back right after this.